guys? Once again, this is Alejandro Gonzalez, and we are going to continue on our discussion about moral philosophy and the elements of moral philosophy. And in the last discussion, we left off with the description and this explanation of what the divine command theory was. Today, we're going to go on to the next step of that. Just a brief synopsis: the divine command theory served more of an explanation for those people who might be agnostic or maybe atheist, even, and it serves as a fundamental argument for their valid, sometimes sound, sometimes unsound reasoning. But in this next part, we're going to discuss another theory known as maybe the natural law theory, or the theory of natural law to be more exact. And this is more weighed for Christians or people who believe in a theistic religion. Um, in the history of Christian thought, which is the dominant theory, way dominant over the divine command theory, um, the theory of natural law can be broken down to maybe three parts. Two, max three. But we're only going to talk about one for this purpose of the discussion. Um, the theory of natural law rests upon a certain view of the world as one, and this view, the world is a place of rational order which is controlled. In essence, chaos is controlled, and which has values, and the purpose is built within to this very nature. This conception is one that is derived from Greek thinking. We talked about Greek thinking in Socrates in the divine command theory, but this is a lot more fermented, and it's understood by traditional Western standards. A central feature of this conception is the idea that everything in nature has a purpose, including humans, especially humans. But Aristotle, who was a student of Plato, and Plato being a student of Socrates, was the one who came up with this system of thought somewhere around the 4th century BCE. Now, to understand this theory, and to put it in very simple and basic terms, one must understand it by asking four very important questions. Those questions are, what is it? What is it made of? How did it come to exist? And what is it for? For example, the answers might be, well, this is a pen. It's made of plastic. It was made by a craftsman, you can say, and it is used for writing. Aristotle assumed that the last question, which is, what is it for, is sensible and can be asked of anything. Nature, he said, belongs to this class of causes, which is served for something, but at the same time is served for everything. It seems kind of hard to think of this conception of a pen, so maybe I'll use a different example, like a knife. It seems obvious that an artifact or an item such as a knife has a purpose, because the craftsman, when he made it, had a purpose in mind for the knife. But what about natural objects, which a craftsman does not make? Aristotle believed, and he believed this wholeheartedly, that they too have purposes. One of his examples was teeth. We have teeth so we can chew. Such biological beings or examples are quite persuasive, because we all have teeth, or, well, at one point in our life we have teeth and we use them, so we know what the purpose is. Eyes have a special purpose for seeing. The heart has a special purpose for pumping blood, and so on and so forth. But Aristotle's claim was not limited, like I said, to organic beings, organic materials. According to him, everything has a purpose. So he thought to take it in a very different sort of example. He said that, if I remember correctly, he said that the rain falls so that plants can grow. This seems very at odds to us now, because we understand the process now of how rain comes to be. But as odd as it may seem to, like I said, to a modern thinker such as ourselves, Aristotle was perfectly serious about this. He did consider other alternatives. He did say that, the rain fell of necessity, and this was only a coincidence that it helped the plants grow, but he rejected them all. So he explored different venues, but none of them satisfied him, because he was a Christian. Well, not so much as a Christian thinker. I don't want to use the word Christian, because Christianity hadn't even come to exist at the time of Aristotle, but let's just say he was a theist. So back to his practices, the world, therefore, according to him, was an orderly, it was a rational system in which everything had its own proper place and it served its own purpose, or a specific purpose, I should say. And I remember my professor quoting this as a neat hierarchy, for example, that the rain existed for the sake of the plants, and that the plants existed for the sake of animals, and well, of course, the animals existed for the sake of people. It was an arrangement that would fall like a domino effect sort of deal. But again, when the dominoes would come back around, they would, in essence, keep falling. This idea seems very primitive now. Back then, obviously, it didn't. But Aristotle may be forgiven. Dr. Carter says, we have to forgive him. We have to consider the important idea that every thinker has encountered throughout his thought as primitive. Humans, believe it or not, well, are we're remarkably vain creatures. We don't like to admit that we're right or we're wrong. I mean, think about. I mean, I'll go back to Aristotle when he presented to the church that the earth revolved around the sun. It was a very compelling thought because everyone thought that the sun revolved around the earth, and rather than accept the punishment and stand firm by his beliefs, he recanted his teachings, and he was under house arrest. But if you go further behind Aristotle, you'll see Socrates. Socrates died for his belief, for his cause. Having a chance to escape, he chose to die for his cause. So this idea of Christian thinkers that came after them found this world to be very convenient, it was a perfect imperfection, if you will. The only thing that was missing that the Christian introduced to this was God. God was needed to make this puzzle complete. He was the one who completed the picture. It's important to note that Aristotle had denied the gods as being a necessary part of the picture. For him, the worldview had an outline and a purpose, and religion did not need to be introduced into the equation for it to work. In other words, he believed that even if God would have or would have not commanded us not to lie, in essence, we as humans would have figured out that lying was bad. This is a very existentialistic thought. Existentialism was not a part of this era, but this is a very existentialist thought. But only when Christian thinkers came along and said that the rain fell to help the plants because that was what the Creator intended. Again, they introduced God into this cycle. That the animals were for the humans because that is what God made them for. And they'll recite Genesis in which Adam is endowed with the job of naming all beasts on the land. So values and purposes were, therefore, conceived to be a sort of fundamental part of nature and the nature of things, because the world was believed to have been created according to a divine plan, not to this natural law. So when you introduce Christian thinking into this natural law, it is now turned into a divine plan. Again, like I said, there was 3 parts to this natural law theory, but for purposes of your syllabus, that's the only one that you need to think of. I do suggest, however, that you read on the third option, or the third theory, not so much the second, because that's more of a ought to be sort of deal, or I am because who I am, or I will because I am. A very Rene Descartes, and Rene Descartes has nothing to do with morality. He rather focuses on being. So I suggest that you read the third one, which I'm pretty sure you can find in your text as well. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, please, and I'll get back to you via email or via video. Thanks, guys.